I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we have our roll call to get us going tonight, we have a very special presentation. Ms. Edwards, do you want to recognize some of our guests tonight?
I would like to introduce a combination of 4 choirs from Charlottesville High School to provide a selection under the direction of Mr. Will Cook. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, and the home of
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. That was delightful. Thank you. Ms. Barfield, if you call the roll, please.
Dr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Norris?
Here.
Mr. Duda?
Yes.
Here.
Before we move into awards and recognitions, Dr. Brown has something you'd like to say.
Well, I would just like to bring to everyone's attention that this past week we lost a wonderful citizen of the city of Charlottesville, Mary Ann Elwood. And Mary Ann Elwood, and I think a lot of you have probably read about her in the paper. She accomplished a tremendous amount. She started kindergartens before there were public kindergartens. She started the Book Buddies program. She taught in the alternative ed program. She was the first woman to be the president of the Chamber of Commerce. But she also was one of those people that just touched a lot of lives and inspired the people around her to be better people. She was, she had a tremendous impact on who I am as a public servant. She was just inspirational, and she was also just wickedly funny and insightful. I mean, the two kind of go together. And just as a little anecdote, if you'll indulge me, one time I was having a meeting at my house, and so and she called about half hour before the meeting, and she said, David, I have a quick question. I don't want to interrupt you while you're sweeping the kitchen floor. And I literally had the broom in my hand. So, it was just, she was really funny. She was a wonderful person, and she'll be missed by a lot of people in this community, and I appreciate the chance to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. We have quite a number of proclamations tonight, but we're going to start by honoring some members of our community for a very special program that they undertook this summer.
through First Baptist Church on West Main Street. And I don't know if Pastor Hamilton, Pastor Hodari Hamilton would like to come forward and introduce some very special members of our community and to get some well-deserved recognition. And also want to officially, I know you've been in town for a little while now, but officially welcome you on behalf of the city of Charlottesville. To Charlottesville.
Mayor Norris and to the council, if all of those First Baptist members would just stand where you are. Amen. This summer they fed 1,250 children our meals, and so we give honor to God and we thank God for the opportunity to serve our community and to serve our children. So we thank you. We are excited to be part of this community for now 148 years, I think. Amen. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you all who are part of the summer food ministry. Let's give them a big round of applause. That really is a tremendous program this summer. I'm quite grateful for your efforts. I do have a few proclamations, and if you'll bear with me, there's more than normal tonight. We're going to start with a proclamation regarding Family Day. Whereas the use of illegal and prescription drugs and the abuse of alcohol and nicotine constitute the greatest threats to the well-being of America's children, and whereas 16 years of surveys conducted by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse have consistently found that the more often children and teenagers eat dinner with their families, the less likely they are to smoke, drink, and use illegal drugs. And whereas frequent family dining is associated with lower rates of teen smoking, drinking, illegal drug use, and prescription drug abuse. And whereas the correlation between frequent family dinners and reduced risk for teen substance abuse is well documented. Whereas family dinners have long constituted a substantial pillar of family life in America, and now therefore I, Dave Norris, Mayor of Charlottesville, do hereby proclaim the fourth Monday of September as Family Day, and a day to eat dinner with your children, and urge all citizens to recognize and participate in its observance. And here, I believe, is Bob Garrity here with us? Yes, Bob Garrity with CASA, Piedmont CASA. Sorry, I had it written down wrong. Safe Schools, Healthy Students. Mr. Garrett, if you'd come forward and receive the proclamation, maybe tell us a little bit more about the program.
Thank you, Mayor Norris. Safe Schools, Healthy Students project, which is a city and county joint venture with the school systems, is supporting the idea of Family Day on September 26th. It is a program of the Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University, and as you'd indicated, has lots of research that indicates that family dinner enhances children's decision-making and reduces the risk of them getting into problems with substances, alcohol, and smoking. Safe Schools, Healthy Students has been working with community partners, including the City of Charlottesville, to support the idea of Family Day. We have grocers and pizza companies that are putting little flyers similar to the one I have for you there on boxes and in grocery bags to let everybody know about this idea. We're working with social service agencies also to get out the word, and with the local schools to get out the word.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garrity.
You're welcome.
Next, we have a proclamation regarding International Day of Peace. Whereas the International Day of Peace has been recognized and celebrated by millions of people worldwide since it was started by a United Nations resolution almost 30 years ago. And whereas many civic organizations and religious congregations in our community have formed a coalition to both celebrate the International Day of Peace and to challenge our community to envision peace and nonviolence in our society. And whereas the benefits of peace and nonviolence in our community include greater personal and communal well-being, greater public safety, and greater effectiveness in the resolution of disagreements, we do hereby resolve that on the 21st day of September, our community joins in the celebration of the International Day of Peace, and that members of our community commemorate and strengthen the ideals of peace and nonviolence. And here to receive this proclamation is Bob McAdams. And if you would like to share a couple words as well, can you tell us about a couple of the events around? I will.
Thank you, Mayor Norris, and thank you for the council. And I'm Robert McAdams, Bob McAdams, and I'm representing a broad coalition of civic groups and religious congregations who have joined together to commemorate this day of the International Day of Peace on September the 21st. We have 2 celebrations planned. There will be one in the afternoon beginning at 1 o'clock at the Senior Center, and there will be a second one at the Burley Middle School on Rose Hill Drive beginning at 7 o'clock. We hope that you all and everyone here and everyone in the community will join us for these celebrations. There are many talented performers who are contributing, and your mayor has also helped out with this in a great way. In addition to the celebrations, we've been challenging the community to envision peace. This process has revealed a deep, solid longing for peace, mutual respect, nonviolence, and compassion. And it's been revealed in many ways, but particularly through peace vision cards that we've distributed. We feel that this proclamation that you are making, this formal statement, is helping us move the community conversation toward these benefits of peace and nonviolence and away from all the divisiveness and rancor and enmity that often occupy our conversation. So we are very appreciative, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McAdams. When we talk, sure, let's get around the applause. When we talk about peace and nonviolence, we're not just talking about peace and nonviolence abroad. We're also talking about creating a culture of peace here in our own community. And to that effect, I'd like to also read a proclamation regarding Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas the problems of domestic violence are not confined to any group or groups of people, but cross all economic, racial, and societal barriers and are supported by societal indifference. And whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and or abuse, with the impact of this crime being wide-ranging, affecting individuals and society as a whole. And whereas in our quest to impose sanctions on those who break the law by perpetrating violence, we must also meet the needs of victims of domestic violence who often suffer grave physical, psychological, and financial losses. Whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate domestic violence on their own, we must work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent such violence, support victims and survivors and their families, and increase support for agencies providing services to those community members. And whereas for 32 years, the Shelter for Help in Emergency has led the way in the city of Charlottesville and 5 surrounding communities, providing unparalleled services to women, children, and men who have been victimized by domestic violence. These services include 24-hour crisis hotlines, safe shelter, case management and support services, legal advocacy, information referral, and safety planning. Whereas in 2011, in Charlottesville, the Shelter for Help in Emergency offered safe shelter to 115 women and 102 children for a total of 3,981 nights, over 4,000 hours of advocacy and counseling, including advocacy services to 134 women who do not stay in their residential facility, provided information and educational materials to over 10,000 members of the community with support from 7,500 volunteer hours. Now, therefore, be it resolved in recognition of the important work being done by the Shelter for Help in Emergency, that I, Dave Norris, Mayor of the City of Charlottesville, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2011 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities and programs sponsored by the Shelter for Help in Emergency and to work towards the elimination of personal and institutional violence against women, children, and men. And here to receive this proclamation is Robin Goldstein from the Shelter for Help in Emergency.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say that we have several events that are open to the public. Beginning in October. October 3rd is our candlelight vigil in Jackson Park. That's at 7 p.m., which none of you can come to because you'll be here. But also every Wednesday at our outreach center from 12 to 1, we have brown bag lunches, which are also open to the public. And then we also have our 5K race on November 5th. And if anyone ever needed to call the hotline for any reason with any questions or concerns, the number is 293-8509. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Goldstein. Next, we have a proclamation about an initiative that the city is very proud to support, the Better Business Challenge. Whereas Charlottesville is recognized as an exceptionally beautiful and healthy community in which we live, work, and play, one that is rich in environmental resources, home to thriving businesses and educational institutions. And whereas Charlottesville supports broader community economic vitality, fostered by cost-efficient operations that are not negatively impacted by rising energy costs. And whereas Charlottesville is committed to sound, thoughtful environmental stewardship, understanding that in order to maintain the current quality of life, we must take measures to operate businesses in a responsible and forward-looking manner. And whereas Charlottesville supports the goal of lifelong learning, driving innovation and leadership in business. And whereas Charlottesville now supports this community-wide collaboration between local governments, nonprofit organizations, including churches and schools, and business organizations, including the Chamber of Commerce, called the Charlottesville Area Better Business Challenge, with the goal of keeping Charlottesville a vibrant and healthy community. Now, therefore, I, Dave Norris, Mayor of Charlottesville, do hereby proclaim the city's support for the Better Business Challenge and call upon our business leaders to participate in the challenge by enrolling before October 1st, 2011. And here to receive this proclamation is Better World Betty herself, Terry Kent.
Thank you very much, Mayor Norris, and all the members and everyone who's here. We're excited that 81 businesses are already involved, and this week, Thursday, September 22nd, we're having our Lunch and Learn on energy-efficient lighting in commercial spaces at 11 at City Space. So we're very excited to help businesses be better stewards of the environment in our city of Charlottesville and increase their efficiency and reduce their waste. So it's not too late to join, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Our Vice Mayor, Holly Edwards, has a proclamation as well.
I have the Infant Mortality Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas good health for a baby starts long before the baby is born, and whereas the education and empowerment of women and expectant mothers to be fully involved in their care can improve the chance of a successful birth, and whereas the same village that it takes to raise a child should be the village that supports and protects the child's mother. And whereas there are large disparities in infant mortality and low birth weight between African American and white infants in Charlottesville and Albemarle. And whereas early and regular prenatal care is more likely when the mother-to-be has been properly educated on prenatal care, has a support system, and a caring and understanding medical provider. And whereas the Charlottesville-Albemarle Improving Pregnancy Outcome, IPO work group, is dedicated to reducing infant mortality in the region by engaging the community through its commitment to work with Medicaid providers to improve access to quality health care for low-income pregnant women, raise community awareness about healthy pregnancy, newborn care, and the area resources that support pregnant women and their families, and increase awareness of Plan First, the state program that helps women and men prevent unintended pregnancy. Now, therefore, the Charlottesville City Council recognizes September as Infant Mortality Awareness Month and hereby publicly states its support of the IPO's activities and other actions to reduce the infant mortality and low birth weight rates of children born to mothers in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, signed until this 19th day of September 2011. Thank you, Mayor Norris, for allowing me to read the proclamation. This has been an issue that's been very important to me during my term on council. And I know there are two representatives from the IPO group that like to come forward to present the proclamation, and I'd like for you to introduce yourselves as well.
Good evening. I'm Peggy Brown-Pavier with the Thomas Jefferson Health District.
And I'm Sharon Beath with the West Central Perinatal Council.
And I think this proclamation said everything. One thing we would like to do is thank City Council for your support in our efforts to address infant mortality and morbidity. First of all, we have a health summit coming up And do you want to describe that?
One of the things the group does is try to raise community awareness of different health issues that can impact infant mortality. And this year the topic chosen was obesity and pregnancy. And we work with Ms. Edwards every year to look at statistics, look at what's happening in our community. And so that is one of the big issues. So on October the 18th, we will have a summit that day that will raise awareness to communities as well as providers to the issue of obesity and pregnancy and how we can better have healthy moms so that we have healthy babies.
And second of all, we have a Safe Sleep program in Charlottesville, and we are able to distribute portable cribs to families who wouldn't have the means to provide a safe sleep for their infants. So it's with the support of City Council that we were able to initiate this program. So we'd like to thank you for this honor.
Great. Thank you very much. We have some other announcements to share. Ms. Akis?
I have two. The first is, I'm not sure, did Rick Barrick have to go home, or is he here? He is our Director of Communications. He's not here to receive it, but I'm still going to talk about it because we're happy to brag about this one. At their annual national conference, the National City County Communications and Marketing Association recognized Charlottesville's Department of Communications for their efforts in 2010. And they got 2 awards at this. One was the Award of Excellence, the best overall website in the country out of 45 entries. And they specifically noted the fact that our website was done with staff creation rather than hiring some firm to do it. And so it was also done very efficiently and inexpensively, and they just were really impressed. So that's one. And the other is for Best Public Service Announcement for the Love Somebody campaign. I don't know if you saw it with Sissy Spacek to adopt animals from the SPCA out of 35 entries nationally. So they also got this. So thank you to everyone I think we have some people in the back room here behind this door from the Department of Communications, but they did a great job. So. And my next announcement is yet another in our series of Our Town Charlottesville meetings where we bring the City Council show on the road and we bring all of the councilors and the department heads out to a different neighborhood for each time and meet with folks in the neighborhood or anyone who wants to come, but generally about neighborhood issues, about things that people in that neighborhood are thinking about and need to tell us. It's free dinner, usually a very good caterer, often from the neighborhood itself. We have childcare, also for no charge, with kids' activities during the meeting. And then the whole meeting is public comment. So if you have something to say to us, this is the place to do it. Thursday, September 22nd at Burley School. And the neighborhood that we're looking at specifically is Rose Hill and Kellytown neighborhoods. So if you live in that area, please come on Thursday, September 22nd at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Ms. Akins. Mr. Huja?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 announcements. First I made last council meeting also is the announcement of community job fair on Thursday, September 29th at John Paul Jones Arena from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There are a lot of job opportunities there. If you're looking for jobs, it's a great place to go. Let me remind again. Thursday, September 29th, 10 to 3. Second is a brief report from Celebrate 250 Charlottesville. As you may or may not know, in next year, 2012, we'll be 250 years old. We don't look that old, but we're pretty getting there. Maybe some of you guys look that old. I wanted to just bring you up to date what's being planned. And the reason why we're trying to inform you today because we're going to, first of all, this Friday, the 30th September at noon in downtown, in front of City Hall, Plaza will be changed, it will have a new name called Celebrate 250 Plaza. So there will be kick-off meeting for celebration. We're going to have a big party for a whole year. So let's get started with some fun. Second, the Koi Barefoot, who is a very knowledgeable about history of Charlottesville, we'll be talking right here in City Council chambers at 1 p.m., talking about the history of American schools in Charlottesville, massive resistance, Vinegar Hill, and all different discussions. So if you're interested in your history, it will be a great place to be. Third, we are inviting all the residents of the community to come and bring their family pictures to City Space, which is right on the garage, near the garage. So they can scan your pictures and become part of the history of Charlottesville. So if you have pictures which you'd like to share, please come to City Space at 1 p.m. Fourth, we are also doing this celebration with many partners, and some of them are First Night Virginia, Dialogue on Race, Festival and Book, Festival of Photography. So they'll be incorporating our birthday celebration at the same time. There will be 3 signature events in the year. In May, there will be History for Festival next May. Then in the summer, there will be a fantastic music festival. And there's a great surprise going to be there, so watch out for what that might be. I'm not going to tell you, obviously, today. There will be also a gala on founding day of November the 12th. So that's important if you want to join the gala. This requires everybody joining in, including citizens, businesses. So we need partners, businesses who will be happy to sponsor the celebration. So if you have any questions, please call Rick at 970-3129. So again, let me remind you, 250th celebration party. So I hope you're in party mood and get ready for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Huja. As a reminder, Government Services Day is Friday, September 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. downtown. It's a great way to learn about all the services that the city provides to the community. Also, we have a very important series of meetings coming up this fall regarding the future of the east side of McIntyre Park. This is the portion of the park that currently features the golf course and the Dogwood Memorial and the small wading pool and other amenities. On September 26th at 6:30 p.m. at the Martin Luther King Jr. Performing Arts Center, we're going to kick off a series of community meetings to master plan the future of the east side of McIntyre Park. So if you have any interest in what's going to happen in McIntyre Park on the east side of the park in the future, September 26th from 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. At Martin Luther King Jr. Performing Arts Center. We have the second meeting will be October 24th, same time, same place, 6:30 at the Performing Arts Center, and then December 12th is the third meeting, and we'll be making sure to remind you of those. Any other announcements or items for other business? I believe you had an item, Ms. Edwards.
I wanted to bring up something under other business. I just wanted to give just a very brief update of the meeting that we did have with the Downtown Business Association.
And any other announcements? I also had an item for other business regarding a request we've received from Equality Virginia to get city support for an effort to prohibit discrimination against public employees based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So, okay. Let's see. We are now going to open our meeting to matters by the public, and as is our custom, when you come forward, please state your name and address, and we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. The first person who is signed up to speak is Sherry Sace.
Hello, my name is Cherise Seiss. I'm a resident of the city of Charlottesville at 210 Sunset Avenue. I'm here today on behalf of Virginia Organizing, a statewide grassroots organization that's based here in Charlottesville. Virginia Organizing has been doing anti-racism work in the city of Charlottesville for the last 13 years. And we recently held a dismantling racism workshop in which the participants, myself included, discussed ways that we could continue to do anti-racism work in our communities. And I want to recognize that there's many organizations in Charlottesville that are doing great anti-racism work. Our comments tonight come from that particular workshop that we had. An issue of great concern to us at Virginia Organizing is the fact that among Charlottesville City employees, there's a great disparity. People of color are significantly underrepresented at the supervisory and managerial positions. We at Virginia Organizing urge City Council to set as a high priority the development and implementation of a strategy for moving more people of color into supervisory and managerial positions. Virginia Organizing believes that there are many methods that can be used to accomplish this. You will hear some more details about this issue from the other Virginia Organizing members that come up to speak. So thank you so much for your attention to this important issue.
Thank you very much. Janice Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor Norris and City Council. My name is Janice Lewis, and I live at 832 A. Hardy Drive here in Charlottesville. I also wish to address the severe representation of people of color in supervisory positions among Charlottesville City employees. For example, of 291 public works employees, 102 are African American. However, of 49 supervisors in this same department, only 8 African American only 8 are African American. City Council must develop and implement a strategy that combats the systematic racism inherent in the city's hiring practices. We ask the City Council, number 1, prepare for development of this strategy by charging the city's Human Resource Office to conduct an anonymous survey of city employees in order to identify what barriers impede workers' movement into supervisory and managerial positions. 2, assemble a work session to objectively review hiring practices and the results of the survey in order to determine appropriate strategies for addressing the imbalanced numbers of people of color in supervisory positions. Virginia Organizing is asking City Council to help solve this problem. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. Jonah Noel Bailey.
Hello, my name is Jonah Noel Bailey. I live in Charlottesville at 130 Apple Tree Road. I would also like to bring attention to and follow up on the comments of my fellow Virginia Organizing members regarding city employees. Other recent statistics indicate that African Americans make up to 25% of all city employees. However, only 13% of supervisors and managers in city departments are African American. The city's current hiring practices are contributing to another major problem in Charlottesville. Minority groups are being forced to move or commute to other counties or cities because they have no adequate jobs here for them. For example, Virginia Organizing headquarters is historically located in a predominantly African American neighborhood made up of homeowners and professionals. However, on weekends you can see lines and lines of cars filling the streets with license plates from D.C. and Maryland. It is most alarming that we are losing qualified and talented youth to other locations because of the inequity in the city's hiring practices. And those who do stay in Charlottesville are forced to work in jobs that do not support their highest potential. City Council must address this issue and take action so the City of Charlottesville consistently offers rewarding employment opportunities to people of color. Your actions must offer people of color incentive to stay and make Charlottesville a thriving and productive place. Thank you for listening to our concerns about this urgent issue.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Ms. Thomasine Wilson.
Good evening. My name is Thomasine Wilson. I live in Charlottesville at 4080 Cypress Point Drive. And I would like to reiterate the comments of my Virginia organizing members in urging City Council, number one, to make this issue a high priority, and number two, to conduct an anonymous survey of city employees to identify why the people of color do not hold managerial and supervisor positions, and number three, to organize a work session with the objective of reviewing city hiring practices for promotions and addressing the issue of underrepresentation of minority groups in higher-level positions. And number four, to hold city departments accountable for advancing racial equity in managerial positions. And number five, to establish the guidelines for measuring progress in these areas, and by achieving more fairness in the representation of people of color among the supervisors and managers of city departments. The city of Charlottesville stands to make considerable progress toward one of the most essential goals highlighted in your city council vision statement, and to be leaders in social and economic justice. We at Virginia Organizing are committed to working cooperatively with you and staff to make progress on this important public issue. And everyone that's in agreement with this would like for you all to stand. Thank you very much, Council, for your time. Does agree.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Brandon Collins.
Good evening, Brandon Collins, 536 Meade Avenue. I've lived in Charlottesville all my life. I have a daughter who's also lived here her entire life. I want to add to the call for you all to particularly have an anonymous survey about these issues that were just brought up, and to have a work session. And I hope also that you will include organizers and participants with Virginia Organizing in that process. I think that would be extremely helpful. As so often, I've got a laundry list of things, and maybe 3 minutes isn't enough to get to all of it. But first, I wanted to say thanks for the Peace Day proclamation. I think that says a lot. And I particularly wanted to thank Mayor Norris and Ms. Zakos for showing up this weekend for some of the conference on the military-industrial complex. Peace is a local issue. It affects our funding of many, many social programs, and we need to constantly raise that issue. It's not just something that the national government has a responsibility to deal with, but on a local level as well, as it affects many of our social programs and the funding for many programs. Another thing about funding, I know on your consent agenda there's a letter going to the state about restoring funding from the state, and I hope maybe there's so many people here today that it would be really good for those folks to hear what that letter's about, and sort of understand that the state really needs to start kicking us down some more money. And you know, one of those ways that they like to ignore it is that they won't raise the corporate income tax, but if they were to do that, we would be in a much better place. Very excited to see tonight the report on the CAT. I hope as you get that report, maybe you can get some more information about the cost, what the cost would be like for full service on Sundays. And I very much like this idea of having service on some of our holidays. And I hope you will consider, making that something that could happen this year. It didn't seem like a ton of money. But there are various things for expansion of the bus service, particularly for Sundays and holidays, that getting some accurate numbers on that would be really cool. I want to go back to hiring. Again, y'all definitely need to address this issue of disparity when it comes to supervisors in the city. There was something I brought up 2 weeks ago as well about hiring, and that is when the position for the coordinator for Section 3 enforcement, that position has been filled, and there was no inclusion of the Public Housing Association of Residents in that process for the hiring of that coordinator. And I never actually heard back from you all why that was, and maybe some thoughts on what you can do to sort of remedy that and make sure that that FAR is directly included in the creation of this new position, and they're directly served by this. It's a very important position, and we need to get a good start with that position, and that means working directly with FAR on that position. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Andrew Williams.
Mayor Norris, councilors, I'd like to applaud the efforts of Virginia Organizing for highlighting the very important issue of balanced representation and equal opportunity here in Charlottesville. While public housing is good, if people are able to train themselves and if people are able to get good jobs or create jobs when jobs don't exist, people can buy their own homes and stop renting and then contribute to society. So I definitely applaud the efforts of Virginia Organizing. I'm here tonight. I moved to the Belmont area. I live at 501 Reeve Street, and I was at a meeting last week regarding the Belmont Bridge. And the biggest concern was that it wasn't $1 million worth of design. What we should do, and what I would encourage you all to do on behalf of not only Belmont but Charlottesville in general, is to continue to exercise good judgment as it relates to appropriation and holding the people, holding contractors accountable, holding nonprofit organizations accountable, because they should be able to support their argument and support the idea for more funding if they have the results to show it. And in this tough economic time, it's very important for Charlottesville and our surrounding areas to join together and try to figure out some good joint initiatives that can support our residents and our people and help our communities. In the future, in talking about the pedestrian bridge inside Charlottesville's McIntyre Park, I applaud all your efforts as well. I know it was tough, and a lot of people would come up, presenting their arguments. But please don't forget about the aesthetics, as Charlottesville is the mosaic, or a very important piece in the mosaic in our region. We need to also pay attention to the degree of artistic expression. When people think of Charlottesville locally or regionally, or as far as the state is concerned, they think of art. They think of Charlottesville standing out good. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Walter Heineke.
Walt Heineke, 1521 Amherst Street, Charlottesville, 22903. First, I wanted to applaud the City Council for taking the time and the effort and the concern to change the strategic plan and the vision statement to include issues of making Charlottesville one of the best cities to live in terms of race relations and racial equity. So I think it's a fundamental step in moving the race dialogue forward and making Charlottesville the best place to live in the country. That being said, I think the issues that were brought up by the Virginia Organizing Project today are significant issues, and they need some attention in terms of being significant indicators of the progress of the race dialogue. Those statistics that they're talking about are clear indicators that we still have a problem. And I know your hearts are all in the right place. I can tell from what you've done in the past. It's a matter of moving forward on the nuts and bolts and the mechanics of making that change. What I want to share with you tonight is just a story, actually. I was out and about, in Charlottesville the other day and ran into a city employee who was African American and had been with the city for over 15 years, had come to the city with a bachelor's degree and significant experience prior to working for the city. This person is about to retire and is still working in a line position and will retire in a line position and not in a supervisory position, even though it was really apparent to me that this person was very qualified to be a supervisor in his department. And I asked him specifically, because I'm always doing the data collection thing, it never stops. I asked him specifically because of some of the things I had heard about the problem. Have you been sort of restricted from moving up the chain because the nature of the job requirements, because it requires overtime, the structure of the job is unattractive or unappealing? And he flatly told me that was not the problem, that's not the issue. The issue is not that the job isn't attractive enough to apply for. He intimated and told me specifically that it's more of what's going on in the bureaucracy and the institution and the culture and climate of the city structure. So I think we have some work to do. I know that there are lots of people who stand ready to help you do that work, and I hope that you give it some solid attention moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Rebecca Quinn.
Rebecca Quinn, 104 4th Street here in the city. Regarding the regional water supply plan and the debate about the period to submit public comments, I remind you that at the November 6th council meeting, the fact that there would be a public hearing wasn't even mentioned. And not once in any of Rivanna's public notice, webpage, or press release was it mentioned that written comments and responses must be included in the plan. While the state regulations don't identify a specific comment period, the fact that they address written comments at all is sufficient to interpret that the public should have been notified that comments could be submitted. Only an organization that does not want comment would take it any other way. Council has to adopt the regional water supply plan. Have you ever adopted a plan so chock full of technical information for which you do not have a written staff report? You should not adopt this plan blindly. You need a critical staff report before you take action. Just a few of the key things you need to be clear on. NDS memo on population didn't explain how the trend was estimated, but referred to growth over the past 13 years. If that trend was based on permits issued for dwelling units, well, we know that some of those permits were for new dwelling units specifically intended for private UVA student housing. In that case, the growth rate that means AECOM analysis double counts at least some students. NDS should ask UVA to determine how much of the student population increased over that same 13-year period and then back out that number from the growth rate used to project city resident population. The demand analysis does not clearly account for the fact that every new housing unit and every new commercial building will meet low-flow code requirements. This should be reflected by reduction in the gallons per capita per day figures over the planning period. We've replicated AECOM's chart for the city to show the effect of reducing employment demand just once to mimic the reduction in residential demand. That alone reduces the city's 2055 demand by 0.45 million gallons. And other adjustments we think are appropriate would further lower the estimate. On safe yield, how can you accept Rivanna's black box results without question? We need a long work session with hydrologics at which you and the public can ask questions. Rivanna has a strong hold over the inputs to the model, and it's increasingly clear that there's some manipulation going on. Does it account for a number of things in writing? I'm running out of time, so I'll skip to the bottom. Regarding the community water plan, I think it borders on unconscionable that the council lets Rivanna get away without providing any sort of estimate of the total cost plus interest that the entire dam and pipeline scheme will have on rates. How does this serve your constituents? At Rivanna's last board meeting, Supervisor Boyd, speaking about the pump station, worried only about $10 million, insisted that it was important to know the impact of the higher cost alternative on rates. If Rivanna can estimate that, then the only conclusion I draw is that Rivanna simply refuses to do the same thing for the water plan. I didn't start out a suspicious person. I'm a UVA grad. I grew up in Charlottesville. I grew up with the honor code. But this sort of tactic would make any trusting soul suspicious.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Stratton Salidas.
Good evening. I'm Stratton Salidas, 704 Grave Street. And I come to you before you today to discuss the potential big money takeover of Charlottesville's water supply and the role of some of you in it. Mayor Norris and Ms. Edwards, I thank you very much for your efforts to protect our Charlottesville's water supply. And the rest of you, I hope that you will address some of these concerns that I have. First of all, I think a lot of people out here in the community don't know that the origin of this water supply plan is a $1 million grant from Nestle Corporation. Nestle is the biggest bottled water company in the world. Nestle gave a $1 million grant to the Nature Conservancy for 2 different projects, one here, one somewhere else. I can't remember where it was. But these were to be pilot projects to help municipalities store water. And what Nestle does, and you can look at this in movies like Tapped and Blue Water and other things, is they go to various places all around the globe and they help localities plan their water supply and get them into debt more than they can handle, and then those localities are more likely to make a deal with Nestle, either to allow them to buy some of the water or just buy the system outright. And then once they have, if they do buy the system outright, a lot of times they'll just let the infrastructure of that community go to waste, and then people, instead of getting water delivered to their houses, can buy it in bottles from Nestle. So that's where this plan comes from, and that started that was a grant given in 2005. And in case anybody thinks that the Nature Conservancy is a particularly great organization, I hope that they'll read the Hook article. You can just Google Hook and flaws, and they will learn that it's gradually been co-opted, and recently now most of the board is made up of ex-Goldman Sachs bankers who are capitalizing on the good name that it had made. And feel free to Google Nature Conservancy and scandal. And I also hope people will Google Nestle and babies if they think that Nestle is a well-intentioned company. And also, I hope people will look at this flyer that our very own Sprawl Growth Lobby put out in support of Mr. Huja and Ms. Galvin and Mr. Byer. And note that they say that the community water supply plan costs $25 million. Well, actually, the community water supply plan would cost about $142 million, and as noted, more like $200 million when you include interests. So please don't make our general population pay for something we don't need and that would destroy one of our best natural areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Salidas. Kate White.
My name is Kate White, and I'm here in honor of the Infant Mortality Awareness Month. I'm also here to thank the City Council for supporting the Healthy Birth, Healthy Baby Health Fair that we had in May. I live at 658 Tyree Lane in Charlottesville, Virginia, 22901. I have written a report about this health fair that was supported. Should I submit it to you? Yeah. Yeah. This health fair happened actually in March here in the Key Center, and it was the City Council that supported it through the donation of that space. It was a beautiful health fair. I was the coordinator for a perinatal collaboration. It's a group of professionals that wanted to come together and help support perinatal outcomes here in Charlottesville. This health fair brought together businesses and practitioners and government agencies with this, hoping to support local families and increase perinatal outcomes here in Charlottesville. We had raised over $4,000 in cash, and we also raised over $4,000 in in-kind donations. And there are some very supportive businesses that gave over 378 prizes, door prizes. We had over 500 people come and tour the hall. They were able to receive free door prizes if they went around and got evidence that they had talked with people in the hall. We had over over 40 exhibits. I wanted to read to you just a couple of the responses from the businesses that attended and were part of this health fair. The Healthy Birth, Healthy Baby Health Fair gave me exposure to a large number of women looking to take care of themselves and their babies. The result was new clients for myself, but even more than that, I met other amazing practitioners who were all working toward the same goal. I now feel connected and have a network of referral practitioners. That was from a massage therapist here in Charlottesville. Then there was the Jefferson area CHIP was there, and they said the time around childbirth is a unique opportunity to positively be involved in the life of a young family. While I was manning our display, I watched the fair give many families a place to ask questions and consider new ways to be healthy and well. That was by Carrie Bailey from the Jefferson area CHIP. We had a new business open that supported this effort. There was a birth center here in Charlottesville. She wrote, "Thank you so much for all the hard work you have done in putting together a health fair. Nearly 100% of my clients for the first 6 months after the fair found me there." So the businesses were very happy. And overall, when I was supporting this effort going around and asking for donations, I found that Charlottesville businesses really did care very much about healthy babies in Charlottesville. So I am asking you to consider to please to support this effort again coming up next year in March. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. White. All right, that's the last person who signed up to speak. We'll now open the meeting to council member responses to matters by the public.
I just wanted to ask the last speaker, what kind of support, monetary support, you're looking for the fair?
Well, I would definitely like the Peace Center again for the health fair, just the donation of that space for that one day in March.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody who spoke. I'll start at the beginning. I think that the things that the Virginia organizing speakers were talking about were really specific things that I think I would actually like to, I don't know if we can discuss it now, but maybe it's something to put at the end in our new business, a discussion on an anonymous survey of employees to find out what the barriers are, and also just, I would be interested in finding out kind of what the attitudes are toward, how it feels to be working for the city of Charlottesville in this context. A work session, and I don't know if we have the October work session free. I know that we have the November one has been scheduled, but I think that the October one, which is October 9th, maybe? Do you know? Is it a town hall meeting? Okay. Well, at our earliest possible time, I would like to talk about having a work session to discuss that, and to invite not only department heads, but also members of Virginia organizing and perhaps our attorney, because I know that on some of these issues we skate somewhat near to legal things about what we're allowed to do as far as setting quotas and things like that, but I want to not back away further than we have to and make sure that we get what we need out of that work session, and to come out of that work session with a real plan for how we plan to have a different outcome. Because I think, as one of the speakers mentioned, we all have our hearts in the right places, but I think by their fruits you shall know them. And I think that not only do we have a rather poor percentage of African Americans, particularly in supervisory positions, but although we haven't lost any people, we've lost a little ground in percentages over the past 5 years. So I think we need to really be very proactive in making sure that we do that. Let me see if there were some other things. The Belmont Bridge design, we've gotten quite a few questions about that from various people. I think I was not at the meeting discussing the bridge design, but I think that this is a chance to really be kind of, again, proactive and innovative about the way we look at it, and I think that that's something we probably need to be looking at. I don't want it to stretch on infinitely, because I know we need a design before we can get the bridge built, and we need the bridge built, but we shouldn't rush just to get it done too fast. And I really like Mr. Williams' statements about aesthetics on all of these projects. I think that's important. And Mr. Collins, I was happy to go to the conference. I think that you're right, that peace as the thing that we did today, but also the absence of war is a local issue, even though it's an international issue. It affects the money that's available for programs in our localities, not to mention just kind of our moral position as a nation. Let's see. I had never heard about the Nestle grant, so that was interesting. And so okay, that was all I had comments for. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just one more comment. I was really pleased that Council was able to adopt the peace resolution. And as somebody mentioned, peace is not just national, international, but also local. It is very important, peace at home, peace in the community, and I think we need to make efforts to work at that.
Dr. Brown?
Well, I agree with Ms. Sakos. I think the compelling things we heard tonight really came from FAR and VOP and calling to our attention the importance of addressing this issue. But I think there are a couple reasons that weren't brought up that I think are a couple aspects of this. One is, what the city can do ourselves is small compared to the bigger community we're part of. And I think that, but for us to take public actions in trying to provide more opportunities for people of color within the city, obviously has an effect of hopefully having everyone kind of look at themselves and look at their hiring practices. And the second thing is that I think it's a big problem that we lose a lot of talented African Americans and to other communities. And I think that's partly a reflection of opportunity, but I think it's just as much a reflection of the type of the city that Charlottesville is, and the lack of sort of a social environment that young professionals are looking for, and young professional African Americans are looking for. And I think that we also need to have a discussion on what can we as a community do together to create a place where music and nightlife and whatever is one that encourages our talented youth to stay home instead of being in Atlanta or Richmond or D.C. or Philadelphia and other cities.
Ms. Edwards?
I see that our Director of Human Resources is here. Is this the time to allow him an opportunity to comment? Because my comments will include the fact that it is not easy to come before council. So I commend all of you who chose to spoke. Shelby, you did not hear that. It's not always easy to speak up here either. I commend all of you who chose to speak this evening, because not only are you bringing awareness to an issue that we know we have a lot of work to do. We know that we've accomplished a lot of things, but there's still so much more to be done. And to keep in mind, our city manager has only been in his new job a few months. It's going to take time. But I just want you all to know I'm just really pleased at how well you were able to execute that, obviously better than I could at that moment. But to show you that it takes time and it takes practice, so I have a high expectation of seeing you all in the future. And also, Mr. Collins, I will follow up with your concern about the Section 3 coordinator and FAR. I'll talk to the FAR chair to see if there's any concern. And since the person has been hired, maybe the next step would be to have a meet and greet for the new coordinator so we can welcome her aboard.
Mayor, Council? I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Beck?
Mayor, Council? I have listened to what everyone has said. I know some of you have talked to you about this. I'm in the dialogue committee that's looked at government employment. Dr. Heineke's on that committee. So the concerns that are being raised aren't new, and in fact, they go back for quite a while. Mr. Huja was in fact involved with the longstanding commitment that the city has to having a diverse workforce. All of the things I think have legitimacy, and certainly I think out of talking to you about what can be done, the one thing that I heard that I think that we can work on is that we all have the same interest in terms of working collaboratively together to do that. There were some specific things that were raised, for example, and you mentioned in terms of the survey. We do ask employees what needs to be done in terms of personal development. There are a variety of things that may be impediments. The one thing that I would disagree with is that the city has an inherently racist hiring practice. I mean, I couldn't stand here and not say that. And I know we may disagree about that. There are a number of people who certainly would like and do want to work for the city. There's some things that we can certainly do more of. Marketing, I think someone mentioned that in terms of just communicating what the city is about and the opportunities that are out there. We talked about the possibility of working together in terms of doing outreach to different communities, building relationships with historically black colleges and so forth, more internships where we get people into the city to work and then build an opportunity for them. If you look at in terms of where we've had some successes, like at NDS in terms of using interns and getting them in, recruiting engineers who are African American and female, I think we have done some things, and so I would just share that, and this is not hopefully not in a defensive way, it's just simply saying, yeah, we agree that there's work to be done. We've talked about in the council's commitments to hiring ex-offenders, and so there's a whole variety of things that we're looking at and that we can do, and there's certainly more that needs to be done with that. Rather than a survey, I guess one way that I would suggest, perhaps a better way, or in addition to the survey, is a personal development plan where supervisors will work with employees to ask them where they want to be, look at where they are, look at the resources that are needed to provide that development. And the city does provide quite a bit in terms of tuition assistance, educational opportunities. If you look at the opportunities or places where there have been success, if you look at police, I mean, we have 3 African American supervisors who are sergeants now who weren't there when I came to work for the city. There may have been one, but we've had some additional ones. If you look at fire, same thing. If you look at NDS, I mean, there's certainly there are places where there are successes. When you look at public works, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that they're different. And why they're different, I can't speak to that either. So I guess in terms of I'm trying to respond, simply there is work to be done. We certainly would welcome a partnership with anyone who would help us in terms of achieving those goals. We're clearly aware of the council's commitment to having a diverse workforce in its entirety. I think one of the things that was mentioned in the press release was about Hispanics and the lack of Hispanic representation. We don't get frankly, we don't get a lot of Hispanic applicants for the position. I think Dr. Brown's comments about attracting young professionals, period, to come to work here and stay here is something that's a challenge. So I'm not sure if that responds to your questions or if you'd like more information now, but in terms of the survey, that would be my suggestion, is to look at, in addition to the survey, or perhaps instead of it, do something more direct. The survey probably we've done it, we did an employee survey, and there's some concern on the part of employees about how that information is going to be shared, even when you assure them that it's going to be anonymous. So asking them directly, having the supervisor work with them, having them identify where they want to go and what they want to be would be my suggestion about how we go forward. But building the partnerships, we're going to be at the career fair that was mentioned. The university has a diversity career fair that's on November 2nd. We're going to be a part of that. We've added some additional staff to help in terms of doing additional outreach with colleges and building those relationships and getting a pipeline going where we have interns, as I said, coming in and being in the organization, and also balancing against the external and the internal, because if we also are criticized sometimes for why do we always hire from the outside as opposed to developing from within. So having that balance, so we've got a very diverse qualified applicant pool for whatever job that may come out, and realizing that as we do the development for people who may not be supervisors now, they can take supervisory training classes, so when those opportunities are there, they're in a position to compete for it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beck. Ms. Edwards, did you have other comments? Or?
No, no.
Okay. I had a few I wanted to make. Let's see. Well, let me just start by thanking Mr. Beck for your comments just now. And I also know that I want to commend you personally for not only working, internal to City Hall to push this issue, but also you personally have gone out and spoken to ex-offenders and people who were formerly homeless and others about applying for city jobs and helping them navigate through that process. So you've made it a personal mission as well to get people into the workforce, and I appreciate that. But it is an important issue. It goes, as Dr. Brown said, it goes well beyond. Representation is very important in management and supervisory positions in City Hall. And as Dr. Brown said, it's an important issue across the board in our community. And it's a community challenge on how to make Charlottesville a true community of choice for professionals of color. Representation is important in our elected bodies. Representation is important in our appointed bodies. As of January, it's very likely that of the four most powerful public bodies in the city and the county, between the City Council and the County Board of Supervisors and the City Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission, there will not be a single African American represented on any of those bodies. And I think it's an indication of one more gap that we need to work to fill. Brandon Collins, thank you as always. It's really because of your urging and others, but you've really taken the lead on pushing us to consider expansions of our transit service, particularly to meet the needs of workers who don't always get holidays off. And so it's prompted us to take that up for discussion today, and hopefully we'll make a decision to move in that direction. I did want to note, you also raised the point about FAR. FAR was essential in getting that Section 3 coordinator position filled, in addition to our vice mayor and others. And I had to double check with Mr. Tolbert. FAR will have a position on the steering committee for the Section 3 initiative. Is that right, Mr. Tolbert? That's right. And I don't know if that's been communicated to FAR yet, but I'm seeing heads nod. So there will be a role that FAR plays in shaping that initiative. And I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
I just will say she's only been on the job about a week and a half and taking a trip working on CRHA and visiting other Section 3 coordinators to get some information this week. But there is a steering committee, and FAR has a prominent role in that and will be involved, and she will be contacting next week the representatives from FAR and other organizations to set that up.
Great, thank you.
Really govern how that works.
And I just want to quickly also thank Ms. Quinn for your comments, and I totally agree. I've never quite understood why it is that Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority either couldn't or wouldn't give an accurate, at least an estimate about what's going to happen to our water rates if different variations of the water supply plan are implemented. They're able to give short-term estimates, but I think what people want to know is what's going to happen after the next 5 years, 10 years out to our water rates. So I think that was a good point. Any other comments? Okay. Well, thank you again to everybody who came and spoke. Did I get that right, Ms. Edwards? Came and spoke? We are now going to move on to the rest of our agenda. Dr. Brown, you have some appointments or nominations for boards and commissions?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make the following, to move the following people to serve on our boards and commissions. To the Board of Architectural Review, Melanie Miller. To the Charlottesville Sister Cities Commissions, Greer Johnson, Kara Nelson, and Yates Noble. To the Dialogue on Race, Roscoe Roxley. To the Jefferson Madison Regional Library, Carla Mullen. To the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee, to the current immediate opening, Ruth Barnett, and to the opening that becomes available in December, David Hirschman. To the Region 10 Community Services Board, Thomas Taylor. To the Social Service Advisory Board, Carl Brown. And to the Vendor Appeals Board, Megan Cloud and Hugh Grappett.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please indicate your vote. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Brown, and thank you to everybody who applied. On our consent agenda tonight, we have item A, the minutes of September 6th. Item B, an appropriation, Virginia Juvenile Community Crime Control Act grant, $452,704, second of two readings. Item C, an appropriation, fiscal year 2012 Friendship Court sponsorship agreement for enhanced police coverage, first quarter, $22,130.50, second of two readings. Item D, an appropriation, McIntyre Park Bike Pedestrian Bridge Transportation Enhancement Funding Grant, Phase 1 and 2, $517,500, first of two readings. Item E, an appropriation, donation for Riverview Park Improvement, $2,000, first of two readings. Item F, an appropriation, recycled railroad steel income, $1,870, first of two readings. Item G, an appropriation of 2012 Department of Motor Vehicles Virginia Highway Safety Grant, $30,386, first of two readings. Item G, an appropriation 2011 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, $37,336, first of two readings. Item I, resolution honorary street name designations, first of one reading. Item J, a resolution support of restoration of state funding for aid to localities, first of one reading. Item K, resolution paving of school bus parking lot, transfer of funds to facilities repair fund, $85,122.99, first of one reading. Item L, resolution Buford cooling tower replacement, transfer of $40,165, first of one reading. Item M, an ordinance spot blight abatement, 704 Montrose, second of two readings. Item N, an ordinance infrastructure maintenance bond, second of two readings. Item O, an ordinance IPP individual protected property for 104 Stadium Road, second of two readings. And item P, resolution, contribution to the Piedmont Council for the Arts for support of city space exhibits, $3,000, first of one reading. Are there any items to be pulled for discussion, any comments, questions, or motion to approve the consent agenda?
I don't want to pull anything out from the agenda, but on the Piedmont Council for the Art, I want to acknowledge that it is a really important service in our community.
I agree.
Yeah, and I would only add, in making the motion that we approve this, that particular grant is for exhibits of art by kids in the community and is a way to really help to expose children to the arts who might not otherwise get those chances. So I do make the motion.
I'll take that as a motion. Is there a second to that motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please indicate your vote. Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. We did want to acknowledge we have some special guests in the audience. Dr. George Bellers, chair of the Piedmont Council of the Arts Board. Maggie Guggenheimer is their executive director. So thank you for all that you do. Okay, next item on our agenda is a public hearing and a resolution sublease to Martha Jefferson Hospital at Jefferson School. It's here before us tonight. First of one reading, Mr. Brian Daly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. The item before you this evening is approval of a resolution authorizing the sublease of space to Martha Jefferson Hospital at the Jefferson School City Center and the Carver Recreation Center portion of the building. The city and Martha Jefferson Hospital propose to sublease approximately 1,800 square feet of the second floor of the center. The city is leasing from the Jefferson School Partnership for the Carver Recreation Center. Effectively, two classrooms, existing classrooms, comprise the space being proposed for sublease by Martha Jefferson, which will be housing their Women's Health Initiative and a clinic in those spaces. The upfit of these spaces will be included in the city's portion of the renovation project, and the cost for the upfit specific to Martha Jefferson will be borne by Martha Jefferson Hospital. The terms of the sublease have been negotiated between the city and Martha Jefferson and are acceptable to both parties. Council action this evening will authorize the city manager to execute the sublease agreement in the form approved by the city attorney. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Daly before we open the public hearing? Thank you, Mr. Daly. We'll now open the public hearing. There's nobody signed up to speak. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Any comments, questions, or a motion to approve the sublease, I guess, or the resolution to approve the sublease?
I'll move the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please indicate your vote. And it carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Daly. Next item on our agenda is a report from Neighborhood Development Services. And I failed to acknowledge at the beginning of this meeting that Maurice Jones is not with us tonight.
Oh.
If you hadn't noticed yet. I want to thank Jim Tolbert, as Director of Neighborhood Development Services, for filling in as acting city manager this week. Maurice is attending a international city management conference, and thank you, Mr. Tolbert, for filling in. And while he's here, we've asked Mr. Tolbert to give us an update on some of the infrastructure and development projects that his department is working on and helping to facilitate. Mr. Tolbert.
And I'm going to go down on that side where I'm much more comfortable to do this.
You have a PowerPoint? Or
Yes, I do.
Okay. So we have a PowerPoint presentation.
And while you're moving, I noticed that Mr. Barrick is here now, and I have a couple of things for you. You earned these. You should get them.
I think everybody's seated. Go ahead and start. This is just another in a continuation of the reports that we've been trying to do over the last couple of months about different things that different departments are doing. And ours has got two pieces of it. One is the CIP projects that have been going on, and the other are developments that are going on in the community, recently completed and planned and in progress, that are helping to pay for some of those CIP projects. So wanted to go through and just show you some of those. We've been doing an awful lot of sidewalk construction lately, thanks to the funding that council has given us. This is the largest stretch of sidewalk, I think, that we've ever undertaken. On Brandywine, it was completed probably 8 months ago. Locust Avenue ramp, this is a small little piece, but there are quite a few school kids that are living down on below Locust and couldn't get up to Locust Avenue. It was a couple hundred feet, but with the shrubbery overhanging and the traffic very dangerous, and the neighborhood wanted this, and this is one that was done for that reason. The Meadowbrook Heights road sidewalk, which will connect from all the way from King Mountain down Meadowbrook Heights in this phase to tie into the trail that will then go all the way into McIntyre Park and across with a new bridge that Parks and Rec is getting built. Mobile Lane in the Fry Spring neighborhood. We've been doing a lot of ADA ramps everywhere we get a chance, trying to put in ADA improvements, and just a lot of places. Americans with Disabilities for the disabled. The yellow with the truncated domes to let people, particularly that are blind, know that they are coming up on an intersection is a great safety improvement, and then putting the ramp in for wheelchairs. We've continued the LED crosswalks. The most recent installations are at the University and on Avon Street. That was at the University ones were joint 50-50 funding with University of Virginia. We've also been trying to mark bike lanes wherever possible, and as council knows, the bike lanes were put in on West Main Street to give a more continuous set of bike lanes there. Mr. Jefferson didn't design our roads wide enough in a lot of places to put bike lanes, but where we can go in and put them without removing parking at this point, where it's the only parking available, we're doing that, but we're trying to cram them in everywhere we can. Again, these West Main bike lanes. We just completed the street lighting, pedestrian lighting along West Main Street. And we are about to get underway, we hope, with 2 Safe Routes to School projects, St. Clair Avenue, Burnley School, and one near Buford. We're waiting on VDOT to approve the plans, and hopefully that's happening any day. Old Lynchburg Road, we're in right-of-way acquisition. The plans are 99% complete for that, and we're getting people to donate the right-of-way, and we've got 1 or 2 pieces that may be a little problematic, but everybody else is enthusiastic, and we hope to bid that in the next 60 days. We're doing a lot of neighborhood drainage work, and neighborhood drainage is our 75-25 cost sharing, 75%, 25% cost sharing that we do with the community. If you have a drainage problem from street drainage, we will pay 75% of the cost if you pick up 25%, and Generally, it results in curb and gutter. Sometimes we throw sidewalk in if it connects something, and we can finance it if you meet, or we can finance it, period, and then there's some cost savings if you meet certain income levels. So it's really a good project, and we get a lot of use out of that. These are some of the more recent. We do a lot of erosion sediment inspections. We have a lot of construction work going on, and we've really ramped up our efforts in doing that. We've got almost all of our inspectors are certified by the state, and we have contractors doing a much better job, but sometimes they forget and they don't do everything they should. So we call it to their attention. We've started issuing reports that have a cost to the contractor if they don't comply, and so we're getting a lot better compliance because of that. We also have gotten a lot of projects now that have put in stormwater best management practices, and what comes with that is a lot of inspection. We've got about 100 that have to be done now. This is hopefully it's before and after of the completed BMP. But what this means is this is a way for dealing with a development project, the stormwater that comes off of that doesn't go into pipes, that doesn't cost us more money to have bigger pipes to carry. It also treats it and cleans the water before it gets into the system, what gets in there. So once they're put in, they have to be maintained, and we have to inspect them annually, and we do a lot of those every year. This is what the difference it was made, or got the best after. JPA bridge replacement, we're not actually doing that project, but we are coordinating with VDOT, and that project is coming along and is currently under construction. We're doing a lot of bridge repairs. You've noticed in the CIP there's been a lot of money for bridge repairs, and there will continue to be. Our infrastructure is just like infrastructure all over the country. It's getting old, and we inspect our bridges annually, and it's a lot of bridges we have to inspect, but we have to also stay up on them and do repairs. This is the 250 bypass bridge over Rugby. Had some concrete work that had to be done, some work to the deck. Beta Bridge was not one that was due to old age, but due to a bus hitting it. We had to repair a university bus, I might add, not a city bus that hit it, and that's been repaired now. The Belmont Bridge fence was one that we just recently did. Hopefully it's going to be temporary if we get through the design issues and get that project built. Maybe there'll be money, it looks like, maybe shortly to get that moving. And we are in the process on design and construction. And just to answer maybe a question that came up, we are not going to the Board of Architectural Review for approval tomorrow. We're going for discussion and getting their input so that the design can be refined and improved. Hillsdale Drive Extended Phase 1 was completed, and Phase 2 we hope to have ready to bid in the next spring. It's moving very quickly, and we're hoping things fall into place with getting that finished. McIntyre Road Extended is moving towards a bidding. The schedule stays complete sometime late spring, early summer. Excuse me, that's the extended. That's the road is under construction. The interchange we're looking to. The next one we're looking to bid late spring, early summer. Just throw this in because I think it looks so good. The Eco Remod House, we're looking for another one of those, but that's a project, as you know, that we completed that energy retrofit to a single-family house that remodeled and being used by LEAP, but in a couple of years we'll put on the market and sell to a homeowner who'll have a great house to live in at that point. And we have an affordable accessory apartment in the basement that is rented right now. Had a lot of housing development going on. Patton Street, where you approved about a month and a half ago building 3 units, and those should be under construction by the 1st of November. One of those will be for Region 10, and 2 others, one for market rate and one for a transition unit. This is the area where they'll go. There'll be townhouses, and those plans have been approved by the staff and are about ready to start. Sunrise, we're doing a lot of inspection. Habitat is making great progress, and a lot of work going on there, and that mixed income development. Again, they're making great projects. Bigger city development projects that were just finished. And again, I think a lot of people are surprised when we go to conferences and talk about the amount of development that's going on in Charlottesville. There are a lot of communities that don't have that development and aren't seeing the progress that's being made. And Brandon Monroe Apartments is a student housing complex on Brandon Avenue that's really been a nice addition to that part of the university area. Of course, Whole Foods recently opened. The Dinsmore, which we've nominated for a Virginia Housing Award for energy efficient design. This is a very energy efficient property that was built by CBS Rentals, Jim Stultz, that opened this year. And they used a lot of energy efficient techniques, going for LEED rating on it, and really a great example of what things could be done. Monroe, another one that's there, Squirtland Square, a recent student housing. Waterhouse is well underway, and this picture is about a month old, so it's changed considerably since this, but a great addition to the downtown with a lot of jobs and good for the tax base. The Battle Building that is under construction by UVA on West Main Street, that's going to, I think, start to change the face of West Main and create more activity and maybe drive some other development that we'll see very soon there. We've had a lot of folks coming in to talk all of a sudden about properties on West Main, and I think this has led to that. The mosque project kind of flies under the radar, but this was built and occupied. It took them a while, but another great little project and nice addition. The Crossings, again, a couple of weeks old, a couple of months old in the photograph. Crossings is the SRO that the city participated in on 4th Street, and it's well under construction, looking at a March, April completion date. So probably May, but March, April is what they're shooting for. 550 Water Street is right next to the C&O properties across from C&O Restaurant. The plans are approved for that, and we've heard have a anchor tenant and are looking to start that project very soon. Oakhurst Inn and Apartments is still out there and working with the owner, trying to work out some details, and he's working out financing. And but this will be a bed and breakfast inn and 24 housing units. Of course, the fire department will be under construction. The plans, actually, this week is the opening of bids, and they'll be starting that very soon on Fontaine Avenue. The station at First and Garrett just got its approval. This is a mixed-use project. If you know the parking lot in front of the Gleason next to the tracks, the mud hole there, that's where this is going. So it's hard to imagine that a real building can fit in that little sliver of land, but their architect's done a great job of designing a building that works there. The Woods on Elliott Avenue, this is going to the BAR tomorrow night. This is the one that you are participating in by donating land to Habitat, 49 to 50 residential units, with a group of those being affordable and the others market rate, preserving open space. And I think it's really a good partnership between the city, Habitat, Southern Development to see this property developed, and a lot of good neighborhood support in putting this plan together. YMCA, those plans have been approved and just waiting resolution of their issues. 1600 Monticello Road is a new residential project that came out. Monticello at Druid just came up, and these plans are approved and they're ready to start construction. Johnson Village Phase 3 will be approved in the next 30 days, right around 150 residential units, townhouses and apartments on 5th Street Extended right below Village Place. It's the final part of the remainder properties of Johnson Village that went through a zoning process about 8 or 9 years ago. Coal Tower site plan. Coal Tower, this phase of the site plan has been approved, and they actually received HUD financing, and they should start by the first of the year construction of 300 residential units, which will be a real asset, I think, to the downtown, putting that many more people living right near downtown and creating a lot more folks to shop in the downtown area. If you remember 2 years ago in the winter when we had all the snow, we had quite a few residential developments that had not quite finished and gotten their roads accepted, and there was a lot of contention. You got a lot of emails, a lot of angry folks that had been living in houses for a couple of years. And we really undertook a concerted effort to get those accepted. And just wanted to run through those because they all have been done now and accepted so we can plow their snow if we get any this year. We're picking up their garbage and maintaining the roads. But Brookwood, Village Place, Carter's View, Cherry Hill, St. Charles Place, Roy's Place, Bleeco Street, and a portion of Longwood Drive. All those have been just recently done, and all those are in the city now, so those residents who have been paying their taxes can get the services that they desire. And then we've got a couple of special projects. The wayfinding has been completed. We're entering into a maintenance contract and making some changes that have been discussed that will happen in the very near future. A couple of those changes are the Performing Arts Center will be named as the Martin Luther King Performing Arts Center instead of the MLK, the abbreviation that was on there. And the Charlottesville Home of the Black Knights signs that Ms. Edwards has talked about, among other things. Neighborhood leadership is strong and running, and we've transitioned to Ebony Walden in my department is taking that on and got a lot of new ideas and looking at making some important changes there. I think we'll keep reinvigorate that and keep it going. This is something that was requested by Ms. Sakos, that after an incident where we had some folks that had property maintenance issues. So we went in and actually developed a property maintenance brochure that has responsibilities for tenants and landlords, and we have it printed in 3 languages. And we have it in Spanish and Arabic and English, so that we can provide it to apartment complexes, to anybody. We give them to the International Rescue folks, and anybody else that might want some, we have them to give so you can help and pass those out. But it talks about, if you're a tenant, what your responsibilities are, but also what you could expect out of your landlord, and if you don't get that, where to go and how to handle those situations. And then our newest little project is one that our interns have developed. Whoops, I don't know what happened there. And we have, as one of our interns working with our historic planner, Mary Joy Scala, developed an audio tour for significant historic locations around the community. And I just wanted to, hopefully it's hooked up, just give you a hint of what that is. This is the intro. Uh-oh. It worked all afternoon. Rick, where are you? Have any idea?
Tell you a story that will add to your experience of this city.
For more information about this tour, please visit our website at www.audiotourcville.com, and thank you.
This is Omar Winstead, a high school graduate of Charlottesville High School and an intern at Charlottesville City Hall.
This is Kristen Rourke. I am a graduate student at UVA and an intern at Charlottesville City Hall, and this audio tour was my idea.
And what they did was they identified buildings or the Sacagawea statue, that things that had some significance. The signs that you see, the blue sign there, will be going in the next couple of weeks on each of these places. And if you've got a smartphone, you can use the reader and get the information. And if you don't have a smartphone, there's a phone number to call, and you can get you'll get the recorded information. This is what you'll get.
High Street was built in 1876. The first county jail would have been located near the courthouse in Scottsville, but after the county court moved to Charlottesville in 1762, a new jail was constructed to hold those on trial at the court. The current jail was built in 2 phases. First, the stone jail, surrounded by a brick wall and the jailer's house, was built by local architect George Wallace Spooner. The second phase was the addition of a brick section sometime after 1896. The inmates who were segregated by race and gender would usually serve a short sentence before being released or sent to the state prison. but some spent years confined to a crowded cell. According to Virginia newspapers of the 1890s, there was one man who escaped through the roof of the jail and climbed down on a bed sheet to get outside the wall. In 1895, Henry Robinson, an African-American man, was found innocent by a jury, but was sentenced to 14 years in the state penitentiary to protect him from lynch mobs. One notorious prisoner was the mayor of Charlottesville, J. Samuel McHugh, who stayed in the second-floor room at the western corner of the building. McHugh was found guilty of murdering his wife in 1904 and publicly executed in February 1905 on a gallows located just inside the jail walls. It was the last public hanging in Virginia. The jail closed in 1974 and was replaced by a new regional facility south of the city. I'm Stephen Meeks, president of the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society.
I might add that Kristen has done most of this work on her own time. It's just something that she really wanted to do to contribute. And these are the signs that will go on the buildings. And again, they will have the phone number. And people, tourists, visitors that are walking around will see them and be able to get information. It's about a dozen different places in town. So, that's it. Be glad to answer any questions.
Behind you, I think. Did you have a question?
Are you going to present the 8th Street project?
No, ma'am. It's not from the 3rd.
That's not what I understood.
I'd like to thank you, especially for that the brochure about tenants and landlords. I think what precipitated it was a family who was had very little English, who was living in an apartment when the ceiling caved in on them in their sleep. And they had been having a hard time getting their landlord to respond to them, and they didn't know what their rights were. There was nowhere for them to know. And so this is a place where they can look and say, do you have a problem with bugs? Do you have a problem with, other kinds of maintenance? Here's who you call. Here's who you talk to. Here's what your landlord should be doing for you. So that's why we did that.
I had a question about Meadowbrook Heights Road sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
Is the sidewalk going to be in the narrow part of the Meadowbrook Heights Road?
Yes, it's halfway there now. Okay. And we're waiting on the bank to release something on the mortgage so we can finish the final part of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Tolbert? Thank you for your presentation. It's very informative, and you've been busy. You and your staff have been busy.
They have.
Thank you for all that they're doing and that you're doing. Next, we have a report on potential expansion of Charlottesville Area Transit Services, and we have with us our CAT Director, Mr. Bill Watterson.
Good evening. I'm not so sure I would characterize this as a report, as offering some information and hopefully beginning a dialogue on the direction that Council would like to go. I've looked at a couple of things. One is holidays, and the other is Sundays. It's sort of the tip of the iceberg kind of situation, so I want to acknowledge that up front, that there's more work that will need to be done should Council want to move more in this direction. Right now, there are 11 observed city holidays, and Charlottesville Area Transit operates on 5 of them. The other 6 are, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and Memorial Day. I think I've got them all. So what we would be looking at if we were going to add service on holidays is the additional 6, and do we potentially add service on all of them or a subset of them? The other challenge would be what level of service would we offer? There are many possibilities. Just to try to give you a sense of what the range could be. Currently on Sundays, we operate the free trolley in Route 7, and if we were to operate that level of service for the remaining holidays as outlined in the memo to you, that would be about $12,500. So it's about $2,500 if we're per holiday if we operate at that level. And so on a full year basis, that would be about $20,000. In addition to Charlottesville Area Transit's cost, there would be cost associated with Jaunt offering service on these holidays, because currently Jaunt does as Charlottesville Area Transit does. The preliminary indication from Jaunt is that their costs on these days would be somewhat more than ours, perhaps a little bit more than $3,500. So we would be looking at $6,000 plus in total between Charlottesville Area Transit and Jaunt operating. And Jaunt would have to operate if we did operate the fixed route service, because under our obligations to the feds, when we operate fixed route service, we are obliged to make the complementary Americans with Disabilities Act paratransit service also available. So I guess that's what I wanted to offer as sort of what we might be able to do in the near term with service on holidays. In addition, there's some information provided to you about Sunday service. Right now, we do offer the most modest amount of service that we offer is on Sundays. Sunday service began a little more than 4 years ago now. The thinking, I guess, was that that's what we could afford to do in terms of startup. In terms of the productivity of the service, as indicated by the recent transit development plan, we do carry more people for every hour of service on Sunday compared to the rest of the days. And the reason behind that is pretty straightforward. By only offering those productive services, the free trolley and Route 7, the overall performance of the system is higher. So one of the things that would happen if we add service is that productivity level, the average number of riders for every hour of service, would come down. What we could look to do is to identify a service level that is more than what we're doing now. Currently, we only have sort of two options readily available, which is we have a weekday level of service and we have a Saturday level of service. There isn't a lot of difference between what we do on a weekday versus a Saturday. The difference in a nutshell is that there are several neighborhood routes that we do what is called peaking, which means that we add an extra bus in the morning commute window and in the afternoon commute window. And what it means in those areas where we're putting that extra bus on is that instead of having service once an hour, service is every 30 minutes. And that impacts Route 3, 6, which works in combination, Route 4, and Route 8. So if we offered a weekday level, that's what the difference would be between what we're doing on Saturdays and what we would be doing with that weekday level. So by default, then, if we offered a Saturday level, which would be somewhat less expensive than offering a weekday level, we would not have that extra service on those 4 routes. One of the challenges with looking to add service on a Sunday at that order of magnitude is it would require us to staff up. We'd have to do a fair amount of hiring. It would be rather expensive. It's looking like that having a Saturday level of service would be about $600,000 additional on an annual basis. It's certainly something that if the direction of council were to do that, that's something that could easily be incorporated into the fiscal year 2013 budget, and we could plan to staff up getting ready for our annual service change in August of next summer. It's not too much different of an addition than some of the relatively large expansions to service we made. So, for example, when we added Sunday service 4 years ago, we increased service levels on Route 5 a few years ago, that sort of thing. It's not something that I think is feasible to do. It's not the budgetary issue, it's more the logistical issue of the staffing this fiscal year. So I guess that's what I have to offer, and I'm sort of interested in learning what more I can find information for you on and bring it back to you in sort of what is the direction that council wants to give.
And if I understand your report correctly, or your memo correctly, ramping up to provide a substantial expansion of service, let's say on Sundays, would take a significant, it's not something you could do overnight. It would take a good amount of time, as you say, to staff up, et cetera, and that given that fact, it might make sense to fold that discussion into the budget for next year.
Correct.
Is the same true of simply extending holiday service? Is that something you can start providing in the relatively near future without having to hire a lot of additional staff? If we do the limited Sunday service on holidays,
Right.
as a
Well, the conversation I had with the city manager is to be prepared to do this with the new calendar year, and I believe that that's something that could be done, if that's what City Council would like done.
Could you tell us the cost for this holiday service?
For our cost for Charlottesville Area Transit, it should be about $2,500 for each holiday if what we're offering is a Sunday level of service. So it would just be the free trolley and Route 7. The preliminary indication from Jaunt is that their cost would be more than $3,500, so it would more than double that cost.
So what does it mean in terms of total cost?
It would be more than $6,000 for each of those holidays.
But you were saying our part would be about $20,000, so theirs would be...
I'm sorry, the cost figures I gave you
For the year.
earlier were exclusive to Charlottesville Area Transit. So if there are 6 holidays, in all 6 you wanted to add service on an annual basis, it would be in excess of $36,000 between the cost for Charlottesville Area Transit and the cost for Jaunt.
Does that 6 include Christmas Day?
It would potentially include Christmas Day on an ongoing basis going forward. One of the interesting things about this particular calendar year is that Christmas does fall on a Sunday. But presuming that this isn't going to go into effect by this Christmas, by next year, Christmas will be on a different day of the week.
So you're talking about 6 holidays, 36,000, but if you didn't include Christmas Day, or
If you subtracted one holiday, any holiday, it would be minus approximately $6,000. So it would go down to about $30,000.
Plus the cost of Jaunt.
Correct, and I'm including Jaunt in that $6,000.
Oh, you are, okay.
Yes.
So
Dr. Brown?
How does Albemarle County fit into the cost of the 7 and the cost of the Jaunt service that's associated with the county residents?
Well,
and how does the university fit into the cost of the trolley?
I'll start with the last. It's certainly something that is brought up every year with the university. What will their contribution to support the free trolley be? And for that matter, what will their contribution be for universal access? There have been modest but incrementally upward growth in the amount of money that the university is providing. There is no contract, so it's sort of a very genteel kind of discussion about what the performance has been. We've had great growth in the amount of ridership on the free trolley, as well as overall growth in the number of folks that are affiliated with the university using our service. So if what we're also doing is adding service on additional days and therefore potentially giving them more benefit, I guess what I would say is it at least creates the potential to make the argument to the university that their contribution should increase, but there are no guarantees. In terms of what is currently in place with Albemarle County, the free trolley and Route 7 don't receive support from Albemarle County. Route 7 does serve into Albemarle County. It has been the topic of some conversation during my 7+ years here, but to date there has been no agreement for Albemarle County to be supporting the Route 7 in some fashion that takes into account sort of what increment of the route serves into Albemarle County. So potentially what I just described to you could be something we could seek to do cost sharing with Albemarle County, but it would be new territory because as of right now, on all the other days when we offer service, Albemarle County isn't making a contribution for that route.
Really? I mean, I thought there was a formula that was based on the amount of service in the county compared to the city, and that's how this county's contribution came about.
We did talk about a number of formulas. I remember many of those conversations very well, What we have been able to achieve in terms of cost sharing is that when Route 2B came into being, when the downtown transit station opened in the spring of 2007, that became our first route that we had hoped would sort of serve as a model where we split the cost between the city and the county. So that we have a route that serves both within the city and in the county. And that seems to have worked very well for that route, but we haven't been able to apply that approach to any other routes as of yet.
But don't we charge the county for their service? I mean, we do get a fair amount of money from the county, right?
We get about $660,000 in the current fiscal year.
And so that's not decided on a per route basis? I guess I'm
It
confused.
is based upon a formula that takes into account what we anticipate our grant assistance will be, what we anticipate passenger fare collection will be, and therefore the remainder is what is termed local match. And so on Route 2B, we split that local match between the city and the county. All the other routes are treated as either being city routes or county routes. So the county pays that local portion on Route 5, which is service that goes west of Route 29 corridor between Berkshire Shopping Center and Walmart. Route 10, which is service from downtown to Pantops, including the new Martha Jefferson. And a night route, which is Route 24, which goes between downtown and Pantops but doesn't go to the top of the hill, so therefore doesn't serve Martha Jefferson. So, yes, there is some formula behind it, but it hasn't been applied to sharing costs on routes that serve both other than the Route 2B.
Okay.
Two comments. I think the holidays seem to be the easiest to add, other than the Christmas holiday, maybe Christmas Day itself. If you take that out, you got five holidays, about $30,000 you're talking about. Is it right?
On an annual basis, yes.
I would love to see that happen starting next year, next calendar year, I would say. Whereas the other things which are important but still fairly expensive, and plus we are doing a study of our system, how to restructure it, and maybe we have to wait till that happens to see how we can add additional service in light of the new structure.
One thing in the RFP that went out for looking at that redesign of the system, or looking at ideas about how the system could be done, one of the things I noticed was that there wasn't, at least if there was, I missed it, specific language saying that the council was looking at possible, that it would be a bonus if you could come up with efficient ways to offer Sunday service, holiday service, as well as more frequent service, rather than just another way to offer what we're already offering. But I would hope that in the process of doing that RFP that we look at that to see if a reconfiguration might, I don't know that it would dramatically change this, but make sure that this gets factored into that.
Is it RFP already gone out?
The RFP is with the purchasing department, so it's still a work in progress, so revisions certainly are possible.
Okay, thanks.
I have some thoughts about the RFP I'd like to share with you.
Any other comments about the issue of expanded holiday service or Sunday service, Dr. Brown?
I mean, personally, I think it's a good idea to do this in context of next year's budget. Tinkering. I mean, holidays might be something we could start, but I think it's, some of this could be really important stuff, but it could also be quite expensive. And I think doing it where you really kind of have a chance to see where we stand. I think one of the things we learned from our last neighborhood meeting in particular, was the perception among our residents that the value of their homes is continuing to decline, and I think that has implications for the amount of money we'll have given our current tax rate, unless we change that to be spending on things. So I think we should wait to the degree we can until the next budget.
Plus, it gives us time to talk to the county and UA also.
I'm also thinking if we start holiday service, even if it were just for 5 holidays, starting in January, then we have some data to look at to see how much that gets used this year when we're making those decisions for next year. So I would propose doing that introducing the holiday stuff now and waiting on the Sunday.
Is that a motion, Ms. Akins?
That is a motion. Although, for motions that involve something like $30,000, do we need any further process than just a motion, or do we?
We're talking about 5 holidays.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Well, we're talking about $30,000.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown?
Do we
you-
have to find it somewhere? Or do we just-
Has the money already been appropriated?
No.
If not, it would have to come back to you in the form of a formal appropriation to have that funding available.
So I'd like to make the motion to request that process begin. How's that?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, please indicate your vote. And we will have that process begin. Carries unanimously. I think you sense strong support for moving forward with holiday service and then looking to next year's budget as a forum for discussing other potential service enhancements. So, thank you, Mr. Waters.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Yes, it
Very
was. Thank
helpful
you.
framing that.
Next item is a report on the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission legislative package. And here we have our
Hey,
good
Mr.
friend,
Mayor.
David Blount. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time on the agenda this evening. And this is the first of my annual 2 visits to you in the fall to discuss the regional legislative program. I want to go through the process with you just briefly this evening and, more importantly, get some feedback from you all as to what you'd like to see in the program. I am going around to the local governing bodies in the region here in September to do this presentation, and then I'll be drafting the report and getting that back out to you sometime the first part of October, and then we'll be making a request to come back to see you again in November to discuss the program and to get your approval of it. So I believe you had in your packet this evening a one-page summary of the priority items for 2011. Again, those are boiled down from the larger version of the program that has looked the same for a number of years. Those are kind of our established positions that we've had here in the region for some time. Just to touch on a couple of issues real briefly. First and foremost, budget is always on our minds, and of course this is going to be the year for the state to do a new biennial budget. And I think you'll see, as you all do, the governor and the General Assembly will be proceeding with caution as they make their way through that process. This is a re-benchmarking year for public education when the state determines the cost to the state and localities for education. And the preliminary numbers on that are an additional $300 million in state cost. I think you'll see VRS rates on the increase. For you all, that means your school teacher employees. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see the employer contribution rate, which now is just over 6%, go to somewhere between 10 and 12%, so it could almost double. And of course, you're familiar with some of the things that have gone on with VRS in the last couple of years. Medicaid is always a cost driver, public safety, law enforcement, other health and human services such as CSA. So there'll be a lot on the plate in terms of the budget. Outside of the budget, the issue that is of most concern, particularly in the counties, so far has been this renewed discussion of the state transferring responsibility for secondary road construction and maintenance over to the localities. I think if we move in that direction, and depending what that may look like, that could have some implications for our cities and towns as well. And at the same time, the Commonwealth Transportation Board is going through a process right now where they are looking at urban street payments. So I think those two are perhaps dovetailing and working together in concert at this point in time. And I would expect by the end of the year we'll have a better idea of what we may be facing in the General Assembly on that front. Environmental issues, there's always a few of them that are floating around out there, and particularly what we've been going through with Chesapeake Bay TMDL and that ongoing process. So,
What's the latest on that, by the way?
Well, I'm maybe going to defer to the next presenter, who's probably just as familiar with that as me. Number of things. In the region, I think the local staffs have been working to get their arms around some data in terms of just what is the state that we have here right now, and I think that's been kind of a difficult task so far. From there, there are certain deadlines that have to be met in terms of the localities, developing their local watershed implementation plan, getting those into the state for review, and I think by the time we roll around to next spring, I think it is, in March or so, that those local plans have to be submitted for approval. So, a couple of other things are going on at the state side. They're looking
Can I
at
just ask
mutual.
a question on the same issue? Are there any funding from states expected to help localities?
You know, I know that's been an issue that we've discussed in the past, and at this point, it's probably a little premature to be able to say what might be included in the governor's budget. But I think as we continue to move down this path, that there's going to be some attempt to either press for federal funds or to try to have some state funds to not only for the state but to assist localities as well.
Mr. Mayor, could I suggest we have the other staff person come on up
Sure,
and help answer these questions?
Yeah. Come on up.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Erin Yancey, Environmental Planner at Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. DCR has made available a small amount of money available to localities or planning districts to basically respond to the data that they release to localities on local land use and best management practices that are currently on the ground. I think it's a maximum of $15,000 per applicant, but a total of $200,000. So it's pretty small, but it's really for localities to be able to respond by February for input into the Phase 2 watershed implementation plans. So, and then I'm not sure that RFP has actually been released, but it's a short turnaround time in October, I believe. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor, I hadn't mentioned too, also have met with your staff and a couple of members of staff and working on a couple of local initiatives, which continue to press forward with you all on that. And I guess from my stand, as far as how you all would like to proceed, with any recommendations either this evening, or you may recall last year that we had a smaller group of you that got together and kind of fleshed some of these issues out and then brought them back before you in November when you look at both your local priorities as well as the regional program. So glad to do that again if you so desire.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Any questions, comments?
I thought the process I'm not so much volunteering for it. I did it last time, and I thought it was really helpful, but I think it might be helpful for someone else to do it this time.
Maybe there ought to be two people dealing with that, because I know Kristen did one. I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, and actually, it was the two of us were there.
Yeah,
It was two
there.
last time.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to do that with Kristen.
No, I'm not volunteering. So you're volunteering. It's not that I didn't like it. I did. I just want to give someone else a chance.
I'll still be happy to help if I'm still around.
All right, we'll
Was
see.
there another volunteer?
Is that a volunteering?
That
Yes.
was a volunteer.
Excellent.
All right, you got your two volunteers.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Blunt.
Thank you. We'll see you in November.
Absolutely.
So presumably any of the rest of us who have ideas about things that we want to have suggested, we should tell one of these two.
Sounds good. Next item is a report on Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission Regional Solid Waste Management Plan.
Like I said, I'm Erin Yancey from the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. I'm here to talk to you about the update of the Solid Waste Management Plan. A little background on the plan. It was adopted in 2006 when all localities were required to have a solid waste management plan required by the state. Our region is the city of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Fluvanna, and Greene counties. And so the plan is required to be updated every 5 years. So this is our first update. And the point of the update is basically to make the data current, review system capacity for the amount of waste we're generating, and revisit the strategic plan. And we've involved the committee, our solid waste committee, which is made up of locality staff and other stakeholders in each step that we've done to update the plan. So to make the data current, that basically involved data gathering on demographics, waste generation and recycling rates, which we have available because we're required to do an annual recycling report every year, and facilities inventory. And then we revisited the system capacity, and what that involved was to make projections on a 20-year timeline on the waste that we would be generating in the region. And that was based on population projections projected by the Virginia Employment Commission. And then we kind of multiplied out our current waste generation rates by the future population. Then we compared that to the permitted tonnage for each of our solid waste facilities in the region and also the landfill that all of our facilities use in Amelia County. And the result of that analysis was basically that we will have enough capacity for the 20-year timeline with our current permitted tonnages for each of our facilities and the landfill. Next, we revisited the strategic plan. We added a progress report to kind of see where we've been and what we've done in the past 5 years. And then we reviewed it for kind of relevance and feasibility given the state of the economy and the way our local governments are right now. And we basically tried to bring it up to date by adding and removing goals and objectives and strategies. The strategic plan is basically structured to fit the waste management hierarchy that's established in the DEQ regulations, and that starts with source reduction and followed by reuse, recycling, resource recovery, incineration, and finally landfilling as the least desirable option for waste management. Our goals and strategies emphasize regional coordination, and that takes the form of cooperative contract language, cooperation between localities on special waste collections, and using the Thomas Jefferson Planning District as an archive for data, contracts, planning, and reporting. And a lot of these things are kind of ongoing, and we've included that in our tracking system in the new plan. It also emphasizes maintaining the minimum 25% recycling rate that's required by the state. And there are several strategies related to increased outreach to citizens and the business community so that we can achieve reduced total waste and increase recovery of recyclables. Outreach would be focused on kind of increasing awareness of the traditional services available, but also the committee felt that there's not a very good awareness of sort of non-conventional services that are offered now through things like Goodwill recycles like all electronics, Best Buy accepts electronics, and Crutchfield as well, and Home Depot is accepting compact fluorescent light bulbs and some of those services that have been cut back by our government services. So also we think that there's an opportunity for more environmentally preferable purchasing in the government sector and the private sector that we'd like to increase outreach on. And then also online reuse services like FreeCycle and Craigslist. There's also a couple of strategies related to evaluating options for large-scale or commercial-scale composting that will be available in the region soon, we think. And we think that's important because food scraps and post-consumer waste represent a relatively large percentage of the waste stream at 14%. And it also contributes to contaminating other recyclables. And we have reason to believe that the service that will be provided to the region will be priced competitively so that further efficiencies can be achieved in waste management. The plan basically wraps up with a discussion about funding, which nothing really new there. It basically describes that solid waste management is funded with a mix of tipping fees at our transfer stations, tax revenue, and fees for service for collection. Do you have any questions I can answer?
Questions or comments?
I always have questions.
Ms. Sakis?
My first question is on page, let's see, which page is it? Page 7 of your report.
Okay.
There was just one thing that just had a percentage, and I wasn't quite sure of what, and so I figured while I have you here, I would ask that question. The Vanderland Recycling Facility recycles local CDD at a rate exceeding 90% of
what?
90% of anything it receives.
So
And I don't know the percentage of CDD that they receive of all
And CDD?
Sorry, construction and demolition
Okay.
debris
All right. So that means they recycle 90% of it?
of what they receive.
Okay, all right. That was what I thought it meant, but I wasn't absolutely sure.
Sure.
And then, can you tell us, you were mentioning the new composting facility in the same sentence here as at Panorama Farms, but is it at Panorama Farms, or is it a separate facility?
No, it's a different facility. This one, the owner has purchased a piece of property in Augusta County.
Okay.
So he's getting settled, and he thinks he'll have all his permitting in line by October.
So is it possible that that's something we could look at doing curbside composting to send to there? Because I doubt that we want Charlottesville residents to drive to there.
Oh,
to
right.
to dump it.
They're going to provide a pickup service,
Okay.
and I'm not sure how it will work with homeowners, but I think starting off, they're going to be looking at like
Schools.
facilities that have cafeterias, kind of the low-hanging fruit
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So there might be some logistics with curbside that you would want to discuss with him.
Okay. I think I have, but I'd also like, that's something that I think for a lot of folks who aren't going to go to the extra effort of doing it, and often for a home person, it's not something they're going to be wanting to pay a lot of extra for, would still participate, and it does decrease our waste stream a lot.
Significantly.
And so I would love to see us kind of keep that on the burner as we look at these kind of long-range plans. I think I had one uncomposting related question. Actually, it was on page 10.
Okay.
There's a chart there, municipal solid waste disposal, recyclable solid waste reused. The only, it actually is another composting question. The only composting that I see here is fat, bone, and grease, composted sludge. But is there anything on that chart that I'm missing that has to do with food waste?
We don't collect any data on food waste.
Okay.
If there were any sort of like random things about composting and any data that we collect for the recycling rate report, it would go up in yard waste, composted, or mulched.
All right,
But
okay, thanks.
It's mainly like yard waste
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So if there was a better way to track something like that, that would be cool. But
Is there some sort of national standard of about how much of a city's waste is food?
yeah, like I said, 14% is
Okay.
what the EPA
Oh,
estimates.
Okay.
So
All right, thanks.
yeah.
Other comments or questions?
Well, I'd just like to follow up about where the numbers in this report come from, kind of coming from that, because it seems like the playing field's changed in the last few years. I think it used to be kind of easy because both the city and the county sent all their waste to authority, at the Urbana Solid Waste Authority places, and so the tonnage was pretty simple to calculate. Can you comment a little bit about where the numbers come from now?
Yeah. Each of our localities send us a report on, they kind of collect it at the public works level and send it to us. So we get a report from RSWA. I get something from Fluvanna and the Greene County Transfer Station. Fluvanna has their own little convenience center.
But looking at the RSWA area, what happens to people who no longer take their stuff to a Ravenna facility, but they go to Vanderlinde instead? So that's reported from Vanderlinde?
No, it's not actually. This is the first year we had to grapple with that issue, and they would not cooperate with providing us any data. So you'll notice, I think it's on page 10 again, I put something in there about our recycling rate for the region ended up being 29.2, but we sort of re-estimated what it would have been if we got numbers from Vanderlinde.
So he's not required to report?
Not required. I was in touch with DEQ to see if they could do anything, and since we're reporting to DEQ, they know about our issue about not being able to get data from them, but there's nothing legally that they can do to require it, so.
So,
The way that we kind of estimated the current waste generation rates was to take the difference from the numbers we received this year and compared them to the numbers from 2009, and kind of took the difference to see where all of that Albemarle trash is going. But as far as the trash that's going to Vanderland from the city, we got those numbers from the city. So we do have that accounted for.
so the city pickup, you know how much of that.
Correct.
But you don't have I know that that's also being recycled, right? I mean, some percentage of what's being taken to Vanderlinde
so what we
of the
do
city trash is being recycled. So
to calculate that, we take the total tonnage that was sent there and apply the facility rate to that tonnage, and their rate is 32%.
And is that a number that's an industry standard number for this type of facility, or is that a number that they give you, or is that a number that we have data on to base it on, or where's the number come from?
The number comes from all of the solid waste facilities have to report to DEQ on what they receive and how they handle it.
Yeah.
So it came out their facility.
Okay. So it comes from that comes from their reporting to DEQ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for household waste. That doesn't count the part that goes for construction debris.
Correct. So the demolition debris was upwards of 97%. So they've got that going pretty well. I think they hope to make better progress on the MSW.
Well, it seems like I mean it's easy to extrapolate 1 year and
Yeah.
come up with a meaningful report, but it does
You're
seem
right.
that at some point, for this report to have any validity, that if the private sector is helping provide collection, I would hope they feel the responsibility to provide data along with it, or else.
I agree, because some of these strategies have to do with reducing our total waste, but we'll never really be able to know if we are reducing our total waste if we can't get that data. So
Would it be useful to ask for that in our contracts with that particular provider?
it would be very useful.
Except
Although
a lot of
the
what's
city
collected doesn't
knows
come from a
already.
contract.
No,
It comes
I
from
understand,
private
but
haulers.
just to make that,
Yeah.
that they're participating in the data collection for the region, which
Yeah.
we're dependent on.
Yeah. Well, the city has been able to provide me the tonnage that
We
they're
know what we
sending.
pick up, yeah.
But there aren't there.
The problem is with the smaller haulers.
Well, I think there's several problems. I mean, I could see immediately. I mean, there's also private haulers who are collecting trash in the city. I mean, they advertise for it, and I know some people have decided they just as soon just pay a fee instead of a trash sticker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's
there's
true.
also, to some degree, it doesn't, I'm just thinking about other things that were in here, but like private haulers pick up cardboard from businesses. Is there a number reported to us in some way for that?
Yeah, there is a vendor we contact for that. There's a number of private recycling companies that will share data with us.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for your report.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last item of regular business. We do have 3 items of other business. Ms. Edwards, you wanted to give a quick update on the meeting with Downtown Business Association?
Yes, I just wanted to make you all aware that we did indeed have a meeting with the officers of the Downtown Business Association, and it is the first of many meetings. We did have Charlene Green from the Dialogue on Race was there to facilitate the conversation, and it's just to mention just a couple of things is what I'd like to do is provide a more detailed overview when the city manager returns and we get a chance to have the Dialogue on Race staff available. But overall, everyone that attended was very open, very honest about the concerns. When you talk about race and racism, it's a very sensitive issue, but we were able to really explore a lot of topics that I'm glad we had an opportunity to do so. The business owners were just particularly disturbed about the comment that there was some kind of a secret code that they were adhering to in terms of their hiring practices, and to assure us that that is not true, and that they're willing to look at ways to make the businesses, to have a culture within the mall that is more open, and that the businesses are open to hiring people and having a more diverse staff. For example, one of the things we talked about was, for example, the marketing material of the mall doesn't always represent a very diverse community. Most of the images that we see now just are basically of white people at this point, even with some of the things that we see in our tourism. So clearly there was an opportunity to look at some of the marketing material. And another thing that we talked about was, even with the hiring, this is also an opportunity to think about some of the soft skills training, and to have a pool of qualified candidates that will be available for positions that become open. So I thought it was a very good beginning, and I thought it was important to address the issues as soon as we were able to do so. And I don't know whether or not the next step would be to have a more detailed conversation. At the same time, we would have a work session to talk about some of the other issues that were brought up earlier, because it's not just the city, it is about the community, and it's about our entire locality and how we could really change the culture in which we live. So I thought it was a very good beginning.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Ms. Sakis, you and others indicated a desire to talk further about the concerns that were brought to us by Virginia Organizing tonight.
Yes. Did you also want to bring up something
I'll
about sexual
do mine
orientation?
next.
Okay, all right. Go.
Thank you.
So I think that are there localities that have done a similar survey, or are you asking us to look at doing a survey that we would design, or that we would design with you, or is there something that you already have in mind?
I don't think we have any, I think we were looking to you guys for that guidance, and to my knowledge, we don't have something, or to compare it to
Okay.
to offer you, but we want to work with you to create something.
Okay, so that might be something that we might ask staff to come with a proposal to this work session. This might be one way to look at that. So I think that the survey and the work session, there were a couple of other smaller things, like accountability system. I think we've talked about already including some of these things in our P3, which is our performance indicators. But to have that as one of the items on the agenda at that meeting. There were 4 things that I numbered 1 through 4, but I can't find them now. Work session, survey. Oh, just to name it a high priority. Was good.
Well, which we
we
actually
have,
did
yeah.
at our council retreat. I like the idea of doing an anonymous survey, and I appreciate your willingness to work with us and staff and maybe find a tool that we can use or help us develop a tool. In terms of a work session, I think if we're going to do a work session, it really, I was communicating with Mr. Foley about this earlier this week, it really should be addressing, as Ms. Edwards just said, sort of the broader dynamic in our community about how do we grow and recruit and retain a more diverse workforce and attract and retain more professionals of color in our community, with the city leading by example, certainly. But I'd love to, find a way to get us together to focus some concentrated time and discussion on that issue.
Do we have a work session time, like on our calendar, if the kind of normal Thursday time is not available because we have one of the town hall meetings? Is there a time, perhaps in October, that would look good for, should we do that by email, or how does
maybe
one set?
that Ms.
Okay.
Barfield work on
Can
trying
we
to
look
schedule.
at trying to find a date in October?
Well, maybe we should just make sure everybody's okay
Yeah,
with
and
that
then
idea
that
first.
was, yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying any no's. So.
Are there yeses?
Well, I would be very interested, but I would wait till November for my personal reasons.
November, that's fine.
Oh, are you going to be gone?
I'll be busy.
I think it'd be a little busy.
That's true. Well, how do people feel about October or November?
November's fine.
This is not a problem we got into quickly. That might also give staff a little more time, some of the department heads a little more time to kind of come up with some plans and some suggestions. I also really think it's a great idea to include a broader discussion. I would think, though, that what would, I think, kind of honor the impulse that brought this to us is to make sure that this is an agenda item on that rather than have it only be broad.
Sure.
To make sure that we've specifically discussed our, the way we spend our money, and then also then branch out into kind of the example we'd like to set for the community.
And there are some examples of cities, of communities that have really undertaken concerted efforts to attract and retain professionals of color, and I'd like to learn from their example. And so doing it in November would give staff a little
Yes.
time to study some
Well,
best practices.
Well, and I'm just thinking of this now, but it kind of seems to me that that the two things we're being asked to do, both of which I think are good ideas, are kind of sequential in nature. That a survey would give us information that would be very useful at the work session. I mean, so to do this, to have the work session and not have that data on why.
That's a good point.
So
Especially if we're waiting till
I
November.
might prefer to see us, get staff to instigate Part A, and with a timeline, and then we can figure out when a good time for Part B would be.
Great. That sounds good.
And I'd like to actually suggest, I don't know how we've done this in the past, but I know that staff have been working, and especially kind of lead team folks have been working on these issues and coming up with ideas, but I'm wondering if we could figure out a way for someone from Virginia Organizing to meet with them to kind of look at some of the things to make sure that we get in that survey the things that will best flesh out the kind of information we want for this work session. You all
I think Mr.
willing to
Jones would
send
say
somebody
that's
into
not
that?
a problem.
Okay. So Mr. Jones will contact.
Yeah.
And I think, and if the meeting that we had with the DBAC was any indication, it's also helpful to have someone from the Dialogue on Race
Absolutely.
available as well, because we have a lot of things we need to improve on, but it was really, I think it was just great timing that at this point there was a Dialogue on Race entity to go to, and a few years ago we didn't even have that. And if there was any comment that I didn't get a chance to make earlier, it was the Dismantling Racism workshop that I went to years ago that was put on by then VOP that really planted a seed for me that, created just a lot of opportunities to have better and meaningful discussions about race, which we have to have in our community.
All right. So, Mr. Tolbert, we'll look to you to transmit these comments to
Absolutely.
Mr. Jones and Mr. Beck. And thank you very much again. I had one last issue. I'm just going to read this letter. It's from Equality, Virginia. It was written to myself as mayor. Dear Dave, I'm writing to ask for your public support of legislation to ensure fairness in the workplace for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender employees of the Commonwealth. The only real and permanent solution to this issue is passage of a state law prohibiting discrimination in statewide and local employment based on sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression. Equality Virginia helped usher a bill doing just this through the state Senate in 2010 and 2011, but the House failed to pass it for the fourth year in a row. Now is the time to act. Today, 87% of Fortune 500 companies protect their workers from discrimination based on sexual orientation, yet the Commonwealth offers no such protection for its employees. Please sign the enclosed letter in favor of legislation to protect GLBT Virginians from discrimination in public employment and return it to me. Join the growing list of over 40 elected officials who support equality and fairness. These letters, along with resolutions of support for this legislation passed by municipal bodies and university faculties and thousands of petition signatures, will pressure the General Assembly to act. And so they have a letter that they've asked me to sign. What I'd like to propose tonight is that we as a council agree to sign on to this letter which we would then transmit to Equality Virginia, and then, in addition, add this issue to our own legislative package. And so I would ask Mr. Brown to take this to Mr. Harris, who's putting together our city legislative package. And the letter basically just says, bipartisan research shows that more than 87% of Virginians support the right of gay and lesbian citizens to work for the government without discrimination. Currently, Virginia has no workplace discrimination law. I support legislation codifying the basic right of all public employees to be free from discrimination in the workplace based on sexual orientation and gender identity.
And did we not also pass a resolution on this matter, I think, recently?
Did we?
I
think it was about a year or two ago. We did. We supported this very legislation, which failed in the House, but they're trying it again. So.
Do you need a motion from the council?
I would love a motion.
That's a move.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, please indicate your vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, before we leave other business, can I bring up some business which actually would be more properly under the last regular business item on our solid waste report? But I was just sort of mulling over whether there was something we could do affirmatively to help ensure that we have good data as we move forward. And I kind of thought of two ideas. The first one is one of my favorite pastimes, which is thinking for things for the mayor to do. And it occurred to me maybe you could write a letter, just simply, from the city urging Mr. Van Linden and any other private places that would collect data on waste to participate fully in order that we can have good data and result in good planning. And then secondly, the other idea would be, is there a legislative solution? I mean, we didn't need a legislative solution when the Solid Waste Authority, an agency, ran the collection, but perhaps we could look into whether, but the first solution would be the easy one, would be whether, since there's a major new player in the game.
One thing I will make sure that when you write a letter, maybe you ought to talk to TJPDC staff, see what kind of data which will be useful. So that the letter is collecting data.
Yeah. So we want you to contact the PDC staff and then find out, and then write a letter for us.
I'd be maybe I guess they're not here anymore, but maybe Mr. Tolbert, if
Yes.
you can have somebody contact TJPDC on my behalf and get the exact language.
Way to delegate, Mr. Mayor.
Well, then
Is that
maybe
okay?
Ms. Barfield can put that into a letter form, and we'll get it done. That's a great suggestion. Okay. Any other business? Hearing none, we'll open up one more session of matters by the public. Mr. Kleeman?
Good evening. I'm Peter Kleeman. I live at 407 Hedge Street in the city. I appreciate having the opportunity to see the infrastructure report. I was disappointed, however, to see that the textured ramps that were shown in the video continue to direct the visually handicapped into the center of the intersection and not across the crosswalks. As a part of the pedestrian and bicycle committee about 18 months ago, I believe, perhaps 2 years ago, this very item was discussed and a recommendation was made and I believe approved by the city that all future ramps that were going to be constructed were going to use the bumps as a guide path for visually handicapped who use canes to be able to identify the direction they need to go to cross the road. The diagonalized ones that were as shown in tonight's presentation direct you straight into the middle of the intersection, and that's not safe for motorists nor for the visually handicapped. Also, the fence that was put on the Belmont Bridge, I don't believe the goal of that was to be an aesthetic installation, but actually to have some function of limiting pedestrian activity on the bridge. And I was disappointed that there was no mention of whether this has actually succeeded. There was a major city investment to have a certain outcome, and I'm curious whether the city has looked into whether that has been successful. A third thing, since I'm talking about pedestrianism, I am a downtown resident, and I walk quite a bit in the downtown area. And there remain a large number of tripping hazards and issues in crosswalks in the downtown area. Also, I think one of the biggest offenders and biggest obstacles are these metal plates that are put over the water drainage areas that take water from one side of the sidewalk and into the street. They get damaged. Many of them were damaged during the snow plowing last winter. They've been bent and pushed up in the air, and they remain up in the air. There's one right in front of the county courthouse on, Jefferson Street, just opposite from the Monticello Hotel. That is a dangerous hazard, and there are several others in the downtown area. It would not be difficult to take a short walk around the downtown area and probably identify dozens of significant tripping hazards, all of which could be easily eliminated. It would just require fixing the metal, removing it, and I would recommend that the city consider not using those sorts of structures in the future, or those installations. The plates move. I have a routine where probably every 3 days I kick together these little 3-plate sections that are right over by the law offices opposite Jackson Park, because there are gaps that occur, and if we thought that the gaps on the downtown mall were hazardous to people with narrow heels, these gaps would capture whole children's feet, and I think it's a really dangerous situation to have these as just a random opportunity for people to have serious injuries. And I think it would be maybe wise to either weld them in place, bolt them in place. I guess they're designed to be opened, but bolting them in place, they could be opened. There are probably ways that appropriate fasteners could be used. But I think that pedestrian safety in the downtown mall can be dramatically be improved at not significant cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klinger. Anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir. Did you have your hand up? Or? All right. Last chance. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.